This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back.
Are you thinking that the homeless problem is only a story for people living in poverty? If you think so, think again. Right in the middle of Washington state, there are people who used to have jobs, used to have homes, used to be the breadwinners of their families, and are now sleeping rough on the sidewalk, just a few blocks from the White House. We live in a reality where stability is only as fragile as a candle standing before the wind. A housing price craze, an unpaid hospital fee, a lost paper, and your entire life will probably disappear overnight. What's scarier is that this is no longer a warning. The crisis has begun, especially after President Donald Trump's latest move. And what you've seen is just the tip of the iceberg. The rest is the nightmare that no one wants to face, and will be the secrets that we will reveal in today's video. Let's head to Washington, a state symbolized by power, freedom, and hope, now hiding a darkness that is silently swallowing everyone one by one in macabre silence. Once known as the Pacific Gem, where technology, desirable habitats, and opportunities for prosperity converge, Washington is now the epicenter of one of America's most severe homelessness crises. Just drive through Seattle on a dewy morning and you'll be able to testify to the bare facts. Rows of tents stretching along E5, right next to the headquarters of leading technology corporations. A breathtakingly contrasting picture between the global innovation hub and makeshift camps is nothing more than slums in the heart of America. According to the latest statistics in 2025, Washington is ranked among the states with the third largest number of homeless people in the United States, behind only California and New York. According to the latest statistics, the state records more than 31,554 people without a stable place to live, of which many people are lying around out there, children and the elderly. But what worries people the most is that most of them have had stable jobs. A stumble can mean losing your job, family events, and one hospital stay is enough to drag your whole life into a bottomless pit. Not because they weren't trying, but because the way back is now covered by skyrocketing rent prices, year-long social housing waiting lists, and a security system so overloaded that invisible. Jason. A man lives with his wife in an old trailer for 3 years, spending every penny to maintain a modest shelter. Then one day, the rent increased by $800, equivalent to a 150% increase, pushing the rental price of the shabby trailer up to $2,000 per month. Along with that is a dry notice: pay in 14 days or leave. For Jason, this wasn't just a price shock. It was like a legal verdict forcing poor tenants to leave in silence. In just a moment, everything becomes more fragile than ever, because any day, even if you still have a roof over your head, can get swept out into the street, no matter how hard you try and how hard. And Jason and his family are no exception. In Clark County, more than 50% of households are spending over 30% of their income just to pay rent, an alarming threshold that experts call cost burden. To rent a 2-bedroom apartment, a laborer must work 67 hours per week, and that is with a salary at least $3 higher than the minimum rate. This means that even if you work the full 40 hours a week, months without a break, you still can't guarantee a porch to cover your head. This is no longer simply a financial problem. It's a social paradox, where hard work, once the ticket to a stable life, is no longer enough to protect people from the risk of slipping straight into the homeless spiral. If even in Washington, a place that was once hailed as a model of prosperity and opportunity that hard-working people can still lose their roof overnight, then what place in this country is really safe to call home? Are we living in America? Or is it just a cover of a dream that once existed? Don't rush to turn off the screen, because what you've just heard isn't everything. Because after President Donald Trump's latest executive order on the homeless issue was issued, the lives of those at the bottom of society and those who still have the roof took an uncertain turn. If one day you lose your place to return just because of a government policy, what will you do then? That is no longer an assumption, but a reality that thousands of homeless people in Washington, D.C. are facing right now. At the end of July 2025, the D.C. administration began implementing an emergency order issued by President Donald Trump, requiring the cleanup and closure of homeless camps. He announced federal plans to take over the D.C. police force, with the goal of rescuing the capital from crime and homeless camps, calling this Liberation Day, regaining Washington, D.C. On Truth Social, he posted a status line asking homeless people to leave immediately and vowed to take them to areas away from the capital that could be shelters, support centers, or be handled according to the law with a fine or detention. As for criminals, they will return to the place where they originally belonged, prison. 800 D.C. National Guard soldiers were mobilized. The city expanded the capacity of its shelter centers, pledging not to turn anyone away and adding more beds when needed. According to new data, the number of homeless people in D.C. has decreased by 8.7% compared to the previous year. The government sees this as an opportunity to demonstrate that the city's support system is operating. But behind the numbers is the story of the real person. Relocation inevitably causes major disturbances. Some centers are overloaded. Many people still have to sleep outdoors. Many experts and city residents believe that this action is no different from criminalizing homeless people. Society often attributes to homeless residents unfriendly stereotypes that they lie on the streets because of laziness or evils. But think about it. Who would choose to stay on the street, catch the rain, catch the sun, if they had a way out and a roof to return to? When the main causes remain excessive rents, overcrowded shelters, and a lack of long-term solutions for supportive housing, any ordinance, no matter how large, is difficult to address the root of the problem. Jesse, a community activist, said that this plan was influenced by the Cicero Institute in Texas, an organization that influenced the Supreme Court's ruling allowing people to sleep on the street to be imprisoned if there was no other place to live. According to him, the current approach places emphasis on arrest rather than support. And if they really want to help, the authorities need to reduce rents and ensure people have safe accommodation. So can we call a city safe if that peace is built on pushing the weak to the margins of society? And if America's capital fails to protect the helpless, is there a place that is truly safe for all of us? If you want to best see the speed at which the homeless crisis is exploding, just look at a map of Washington state and circle 3 names: King County, Pierce County, and Spokane County. These are not just densely populated areas. They are hotspots whose community's endurance is being tested to the limit. In King County, including Seattle, more than 16,000 people are experiencing homelessness, accounting for more than half of the state's total homeless population. Not only is this number large, it is also up 23% in just 2 years, from 2022 to 2024. It's worth mentioning that King County currently has the highest rate of chronic homeless people in the entire state, who have been homeless for long periods of time, often with physical or mental health problems, making reintegration becomes more difficult than ever. Seattle, the tech capital of the Northwest, remains bright at night with skyscrapers and crowded cafes. But right below that magnificent picture are rows of tents quickly set up on the sidewalk, close to the highways, or nestled in hidden corners of the park. The distance between city worth living and city of tents canvas is only a few blocks. Longtime residents say they no longer realize the neighborhood they grew up in, where now every morning a few new tent roofs grow up as a survival reflex. Leaving King County and heading south is Pierce County, where the city of Tacoma plays a central role. Although the latest figures have not been fully released, Pierce County is recorded as the state's second largest homeless area, behind only King County. Tacoma was once a busy port city with a busy railroad, but today many neighborhoods around the center have become gathering places for makeshift camps. Locals said they were both sympathetic and helpless. We wanted to help, but didn't know where to start, and when support services are stretched, things only get worse. In the eastern part of the state, Spokane County emerged as the third hottest spot. As the largest population center in the inland Northwest, Spokane once boasted a cohesive community and a lower cost of living than the West Coast. But in recent years, internal migration and escalating rents have driven many families out of the housing market. Spokane shelters are constantly operating at full capacity, especially in winter when temperatures drop below 0 degrees Celsius. And when there is no more room, tents built close to the Spokane River become a reluctant solution, with many potential health and safety risks. Common to all three areas is a severe shortage of affordable housing. Although support programs exist, social housing waiting lists last every year, while rental and living costs increase much faster than average income. This is not just an accommodation issue, but a mirror picture of the system's cracks. An imbalanced housing market, support policies that have not kept up with reality, and economic pressure pushing thousands of people to the boundary of survival. If once potential areas like King, Pierce, and Spokane are still breaking at this rate, where else in Washington or in America can say that they are immune to the homeless crisis? In Washington, especially in big cities like Seattle and Tacoma, rents have become an undercurrent that has swept away all the clinging efforts of tens of thousands of people. In just a few years, the cost of renting a 1- or 2-bedroom apartment has outpaced average wage growth, turning the dream of settling in into an increasingly out-of-reach goal. In Seattle, where giant skyscrapers and tech offices are popping up, the average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment now hovers around the $2,300 to $2,500 per month mark. In Tacoma, despite its smaller size, rents climb to $1,800 to $2,000 per month, a figure enough to swallow more than half of the income of many working households. With such pressure, even those who work the full 40 hours per week, hard-working and stable, still find it impossible to balance their budget between rent, living expenses, and other essential items. The problem became more acute as a wave of layoffs and cuts in working hours took place across the board. Service, retail, and transportation industries, which is home to many low-income people, is downsizing. A 56-year-old warehouse worker in Tacoma shared, "I have never missed a day of work, but when the company cut hours, the rent became an unbearable burden. With just such a slip, a small amount of savings is used up, and the risk of homelessness becomes present." The resulting chain quickly spread to community health and relief services. Emergency rooms are receiving an increasing number of cases related to living outdoors, from pneumonia, malnutrition, to injuries caused by harsh weather conditions. Food support centers and shelters that have been stretched to serve now face greater pressure, as the number of people needing help increases, but budgets and human resources do not increase in time. The combination of rising rents and unemployment creates a dangerous spiral. Losing a job causes income to decrease, leading to not being able to pay the rent. Being deported pushes people onto the streets. From there, health declines, making it even more difficult to find a new job. This loop not only erodes individuals who are on the fringes of society, but also shakes up the entire working class, who once believed that just working hard was enough to keep a roof over their heads. How long will this spiral of unemployed, rents take more families off their roofs? And if potential cities like Seattle and Tacoma can't even protect their residents, who will? The solution lies not only in waiting for the new policy, but also in each individual preparing themselves a safety pad. Services like Better Budget help manage spending and savings intelligently, while community housing assistance programs like Habitat for Humanity offer lower-cost access to stable housing. Because sometimes, protecting your roof starts with planning today before the storm hits. There is a reality that is happening silently but clearly. More and more people are leaving Washington state. Not because they don't love this land, but because they can't continue to stay in an environment where rents are skyrocketing, housing opportunities are scarce, and now there are forced relocation policies, homeless camps, after a new executive order from President Trump. In Seattle, King County, and many major metropolitan areas, finding a stable place to live at a reasonable cost has become an arduous journey. Those who have been around for decades have begun to consider leaving for states with lower living costs or returning to the small towns where they were born. Some shared that that decision was not easy because it meant leaving work, community, and relationships that have been together for life. The impact of the ordinance cleaning up the homeless camp is even more stressful. People who are on the line between having a home and losing a home feel insecure. Just a slip, losing a job, getting sick, or increasing rents by can get caught up in the homeless spiral. And when the camps were disbanded, not everyone could find new shelter. Some were forced to leave the state, looking for opportunities elsewhere in the hope of starting over. Communities in Pierce County, Spokane County have noted a similar situation. Many young families and the elderly are considering moving because of cost pressures and security concerns. During community meetings, many residents expressed regret at seeing longtime neighbors packing, selling their homes, or returning their leases. Someone said frankly, "I love this place, but I can't beat the numbers on paper." It's worth noting that this wave of exits doesn't just come from people who are struggling financially. Even a middle-class section, which is the backbone of the local economy, started looking for other places to live. Partly because of concerns about an unstable future, partly because of wanting to protect savings and quality of life for the family. As more people left, chain consequences began to appear. Some small businesses lost patrons, schools recorded declining student numbers, and already bustling neighborhoods became empty. In neighborhoods that used to be bustling with the sound of children playing, there are now empty houses with closed doors. Is Washington pushing itself to lose part of its soul by letting longtime residents leave? And if this trend continues, who will be left to preserve the communities and values the state once boasted of? In Washington, the story of homelessness stops short of images of makeshift tent roofs under bridges or rows of park benches being occupied as beds. It has become a vicious cycle that is difficult to escape: escalating rent prices, losing affordability, losing home, finding it difficult to find a job, making it harder to rent a house again. And every time new policies or economic fluctuations appear, this spiral seems to be tightened. Many people who used to have stable jobs, from warehouse staff, delivery drivers, to nurses, now have to line up at free food stations. Cause? They couldn't handle the spike in rent after just a few months. In Seattle and Tacoma, a 2-bedroom apartment now costs as much as, or more, than the monthly income of many households. For those who have just lost their jobs or are only working part-time, all savings are quickly eroded. When you lose your place of residence, your ability to find and keep a job also declines significantly. A fixed address is often a requirement in a job application. Without it, already few job opportunities would now become even more fragile. This puts many people into a position without a house because there is no work, and without a job because there is no house. Support services such as temporary shelters or transitional housing in some areas are already operating at full capacity, but demand always far exceeds supply. Prolonged precariousness also directly affects community psychology. The once peaceful neighborhoods now see many small shops close early, homeowners build more fences, and residents limit going out when it's dark. The worry lies not only in insecurity, but also in the feeling of gradually losing the identity of the community where neighbors once knew each other's names. But now, there are only wary eyes. Some nonprofits in Washington are testing micro-housing models or subletting vacant houses for temporary accommodation. Brands like Habitat for Humanity have been successful in working with authorities and communities to build affordable homes at the cost of funded materials. At the same time, a number of companies in the technology and construction sectors are also considering investing in cost-effective prefabricated housing projects to provide short-term solutions while waiting for sustainable housing policies to be adopted. Can Washington break this vicious cycle before more families fall to the bottom? And more importantly, as the economy, policies and rental market remain volatile, who will be persistent enough to lead the journey out of this nightmare? As the wave of homelessness in Washington continues to escalate, especially after the impact of new federal policies, local governments have had to manage to find a way out amid pressure. In many cities, from Seattle to Tacoma, city councils are constantly holding emergency meetings to assess the situation and find immediate solutions. Although budgets are already tight, some localities still prioritize devoting more resources to temporary shelter programs and psychological support services. However, many people believe that this is just a temporary bandage covering an increasingly ulcerated wound. In addition to efforts from the government, communities are also becoming an important part of the response. Many non-profits, volunteer groups, and even local businesses have begun to join hands. In some neighborhoods, people make their own survival support packages, including blankets, warm coats, canned food, and toiletries to distribute to people living on the streets. Some churches and community centers opened their doors wide, turning the living hall into a temporary shelter when the weather turned cold. However, coordination between levels of government, social organizations, and communities still has many limitations. There are places where services are deployed, but there is a shortage of staff to maintain them. There are places where there are volunteers, but there is an insufficient supply of items. This lack of synchronization causes overall efficiency to be reduced, and many people still sleep outdoors despite the availability of paper-based assistance programs. Although there is still much controversy, one thing in common is that most parties realize that the problem has gone beyond the ability of a social sector to handle it alone. Intersectoral, interregional, and intercommunity coordination appears to be the only key to making a tangible impact. Cooperation programs between city governments, non-profit organizations, and businesses such as the public-private partnership model to build a mixed housing cluster are considered potential directions. Finally, this crisis seems to be testing not only the capacity of management, but also the patience and solidarity of the community. Without drastic and closely coordinated steps, this living nightmare will likely persist, leaving social scars that will be difficult to erase for years to come. Washington is mired in a homeless crisis more severe than ever, especially after the latest move from the federal government. The streets of Seattle, Tacoma, and Spokane turned into rows of temporary tents, where each family struggled with cold rain, unemployment, and deprivation. Behind every hut is the story of losing your home, losing your job, losing hope. What will the community and government do to prevent this wave of crisis from spiraling out of control? This is not just Washington's problem. It's a wake-up call for the entire United States. Can we continue to turn away when even those who once had a home and stable job now have to sleep in the cold rain? And if Washington today is a warning, where will your city stand tomorrow? Please share your thoughts under comments. If you are interested in this story, don't forget. Click like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments section. Each of your opinions is part of a dialogue about the future of Philadelphia, about human rights, and about how we care for the most vulnerable people in our communities. The content in this video was produced with the purpose of informing, educating, and social reflection. We present public data, expert observations, and community stories, not to criticize or promote any policy, individual, or organization. Any information about laws, policies or solutions related to homeless people should be consulted from appropriate official sources, authorities, and experts. The views and analysis presented in the video are overview comments of a reflective and exploratory nature, not a substitute for legal, medical, or social advice. Viewers are encouraged to think independently, discuss and consult multiple sources before making comments or taking action. We respect the human rights, privacy, and dignity of all individuals, especially the homeless, and commit not to increase stigma or discrimination of any kind.